Hello friends, good day to you all. In this audio tutorial, we will talk about important articles of Indian Constitution and their subject matter. So starting from the part 1 of the Indian Constitution. Part 1 of the Indian Constitution covers Union and States of India. Union and States of India are covered from Article 1 to Article 4. Now I will tell you something in very much brief about Article 1 to Article 4. In detail about Article 1 to Article 4 will be covered in my subsequent audio tutorials. In this tutorial, I will tell you a basic idea about all the articles, all the important articles. And I will tell you that which article is covered under which part. So it will be basically a introductory type of tutorial, which is, you can say, important from the point of view of examinations like SSC CGL, Staff Selection Commission Combined Graduate Examination, and examination like Food Corporation of India Assistant Grade, RBI Grade B, and SBI PO, State Bank of India Probationary Officers, IBPS PO. So as far as this audio tutorial is concerned, this is not for higher general studies preparation. That is, it is not for preparation of IAS or PCS or other big examinations, big UPSC examinations. This audio tutorial is just for low level examinations in which a very nominal sort of GK is asked. So again, repeating this, I will cover all the parts of the Indian Constitution and which article comes under those parts. So covered under part 1 of the Indian Constitution are Union and States of India. It is from Article 1 to Article 4. Now, Article 1 of the Indian Constitution says about the name and territory of the Union. I repeat, Article 1 of the Indian Constitution tells us about the name and territory of the Union. Following points are there in Article 1 of the Indian Constitution. So, from now onwards, I will speak a bit slowly so that if you want to make notes of these things, you can make a note. And obviously, from the web page on which you are listening this video audio tutorial, there is a written note also available on that web page. So if you want to read it there, you can read it there. And if you want to jot it down by yourself, you can do that also. So Article 1 of the Indian Constitution, name and territory of the Union, 3 points come under it. First point, India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. I repeat, India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. Second point, the states and the territories thereof shall be as specified as in the first schedule. I repeat, the states and the territories thereof shall be as specified as in the first schedule. Third point, the territory of India shall comprise the territories of the states, union territories specified in the first schedule, and such other territories as may be acquired. So this was Article 1 of the Indian Constitution. I told you 3 important points of this Article 1 of the Indian Constitution. After this, I jump to Article 2 of the Indian Constitution. So Article 2 of the Indian Constitution deals with admission or establishment of new states. For doing this, Parliament may by law admit into the Union or establish new states on such terms and conditions as it thinks fit. That means that under Article 2 of the Indian Constitution, this article has in detail given the provisions that deal with the admission or establishment of new states, and this can be done by a Parliament, and by its power the Parliament can admit into the Union or form new states on such terms and conditions as the Parliament think that they are fit according to the prevailing conditions. After this, we come to Article 3 of the Indian Constitution. Article 3 of the Indian Constitution deals with formation of new states and alteration of areas, boundaries, or names of existing states. I repeat, Article 3 of the Indian Constitution deals with formation of new states and alteration of areas, boundaries, or names of existing states. In detail, it contains below provisions. Provision number 1. It can form a new state by separation of territory from any state or by uniting two or more states or part of states or by uniting any territory to a part of any state. Second point, increase the area of any state. This means that if we have to increase the area of any state, the provisions for doing this are being mentioned in Article 3 of the Indian Constitution, and if the Parliament wants to do it, it has to do it in accordance to the provisions that are mentioned in the Article 3 of the Indian Constitution. Third point, it deals with diminishing the area of any state. That means that if we have to decrease the area of any state so as to make administration more efficient, then we can do it according to the provisions mentioned in Article 3 of the Indian Constitution. Point 4. This also details the provisions that deal with altering the boundaries of any state. Point 5. In this Article 3 of the Indian Constitution, provisions are also mentioned through which the name of any state can be altered or changed. So this was Article 3 of the Indian Constitution. Now we come to the Article 4 of the Indian Constitution. So Article 4 of the Indian Constitution says that laws made under Articles 2 and Articles 3 to provide for the amendment of the first and fourth schedules and supplemental, incidental and consequential matters, that is, any law referred to in Article 2 or Article 3 shall contain such provisions for the amendment of the first schedule and the fourth schedule as may be necessary to give effect to the provisions of the law. I will repeat again the Article 4 of the Indian Constitution. It says, laws made under Articles 2 and Article 3 to provide for the amendment of the first and fourth schedules and supplemental, incidental and consequential matters, that is, any law referred to in Article 2 or Article 3 shall contain such provisions for the amendment of the first schedule and the fourth schedule as may be necessary to give effect to the provisions of the law. Now, after covering Article 4 of the Indian Constitution, we wrap up Part 1 of the Indian Constitution in short. Obviously, in detail, Part 1 of the Indian Constitution is quite wide and there are many provisions covered in that Part 1. So, in subsequent audio lectures, I will upload audio lectures that will deal in detail with Part 1 of the Indian Constitution. This particular audio tutorial is going to sum up in front of you some of the most important articles and parts of the Indian Constitution. So everything in this audio tutorial will be in a succinct form. So, coming to the Part 2 of the Indian Constitution, Part 2 of the Indian Constitution deals with citizenship and it is covered from Articles 5 to Article 11. So, Article 5 of the Indian Constitution deals with citizenship at the commencement of the Constitution. Part 6 of the Indian Constitution deals with rights of citizenship of certain persons who have migrated to India from Pakistan. Article 7 of the Indian Constitution deals with rights of citizenship of certain migrants to Pakistan. Article 8 of the Indian Constitution deals with rights of citizenship of certain persons of Indian origin residing outside India. Article 9 of the Indian Constitution deals with persons voluntarily acquiring citizenship of a foreign state not to be the citizens of India anymore. Article 10 of the Indian Constitution continuance of the rights of citizenship. Article 11 of the Indian Constitution deals with the power of the Parliament to regulate the right of citizenship by law. So these were main articles that are covered under part 2 of the Indian Constitution. After wrapping up part 2, we come to part 3 of the Indian Constitution. Part 3 of the Indian Constitution deals with fundamental rights, and those fundamental rights are covered under Article 12 to Article 35. So, Article 13 of the Indian Constitution deals with laws that are inconsistent with or in derogation of the fundamental rights available to the citizens of India. Article 14 of the Indian Constitution says and tells us about equality before law. Article 16 of the Indian Constitution tells us about equality of opportunity in matters of public employment. Article 17 of the Indian Constitution deals with abolition of untouchability. Article 19 of the Indian Constitution deals with protection of certain rights regarding freedom of speech, etc. Article 21 of the Indian Constitution deals with and tells us about protection of life and personal liberty. Article 21A of the Indian Constitution deals with right to elementary education. Article 25 of the Indian Constitution deals with and tells us about freedom of conscience and free profession, practice and propagation of religion. Article 30 of the Indian Constitution tells us about the rights of the minorities to establish and administer educational institutes. Article 31C of the Indian Constitution tells us about certain directive principles which were given power and effect. Article 32 of the Indian Constitution deals with remedies for enforcement of fundamental rights, including writs. Article 32 of the Indian Constitution, I have already told, this is remedies for enforcement of fundamental rights, including writs. Now with this, these are the most important articles covered under part 3 of the Indian Constitution. After wrapping up part 3, we come to part 4 of the Indian Constitution, which deals with directive principles of state policy. These are covered under articles 36 to 51. Article 36 to 51. So, Article 38 of the Indian Constitution says and tells us state to secure a social order for the promotion of welfare of people. Article 40 of the Indian Constitution tells us about organization of village panchayats. Article 44 of the Indian Constitution details about uniform civil code for the citizens. Article 45 of the Indian Constitution provision for early childhood care and education to children below the age of 6 years. Article 46 of the Indian Constitution promotion of educational and economic interests of scheduled castes, scheduled tribes and other weaker sections. Article 50 of the Indian Constitution, it deals with separation of judiciary from executive. Article 51 of the Indian Constitution, promotion of international peace and security. Now, after this, we wrap up part 4 of the Indian Constitution. Now, there is one more part named as Part 4A of the Indian Constitution. Part 4A of the Indian Constitution deals with fundamental duties, and only one article is covered under it, which is named as Article 51A of the Indian Constitution. So, Article 51A of the Indian Constitution deals with fundamental duties. So, after covering up Part 4A of the Indian Constitution, we come to Part 5 of the Indian Constitution that deals with Union Government, which is covered from Article 52 to to Article 151. Article 72 of the Indian Constitution details us about the power of President to grant pardons and to suspend, remit or commute sentences in certain cases. Article 74 of the Indian Constitution deals with Council of Ministers to aid and advise the President. Article 78 of the Indian Constitution details duties of Prime Minister of the furnishing of information to the President, and if the President so requires, to submit for the consideration of the Council of Ministers any matter on which a decision has been taken by a minister but which has not been considered by the Council. I again repeat, Article 17 of the Indian Constitution describes the duties of the Prime Minister in order to furnish the information to the President, and if the President so wants, to submit for the consideration of the Council of Ministers any matter on which a decision has been taken by a minister but which has not been considered by the Council. By saying here Council, we mean the Council of Ministers, that is the Cabinet Ministers which work under the Prime Minister. And as we all know, but at this point of time I would like to tell you that Cabinet Ministers are the main ministers that work under the Prime Minister, and they have different portfolio allotted to them. For example, Sri Salman Khurshid is the Foreign Minister of India at present. So he is a Cabinet Minister who is heading the Foreign Affairs Ministry of the Government of India. For some more example, if we talk about the Finance Ministry, the Finance Minister currently is P. Chidambaram. So P. Chidambaram has the portfolio of the Finance Ministry. If we come to the Home Ministry, we know that our Home Minister is Sushil Kumar Shinde. So Shri Sushil Kumar Shinde has the portfolio of Home Ministry, and he is also a Cabinet Minister. So those persons who are in charge of important portfolios or important departments as a whole, and their word is considered as the final decision on any matter which is concerned to their department. So they have a very important role to play. And this whole group of Cabinet Ministers or Council of Ministers is headed by the Prime Minister of India. So after that, Article 110 of the Indian Constitution details us about the definition of money bills. Article 112 of the Indian Constitution, it tells us about annual financial statement, that is the budget. Article 123 of the Indian Constitution details power of President to promulgate ordinances during recess of Parliament. Article 143 of the Indian Constitution details power of President to consult Supreme Court. With this, we wrap up important articles covered under Part 5 of the Indian Constitution. Now we will talk about important articles covered under Part 6 of the Indian Constitution, that deals with state government, Articles 152 to Articles 237. Article 155 of the Indian Constitution details appointment of the governor by the President. Article 161 of the Indian Constitution details power of governor to grant pardons, etc., and to suspend, remit or commute sentences in certain cases. Article 163 of the Indian Constitution details councils of ministers to advise and aid the governor. Article 167 of the Indian Constitution details duties of Chief Minister with regarding to the furnishing of information to the governor. Article 169 of the Indian Constitution deals with abolition and creation of legislative councils in states. Article 200 of the Indian Constitution details assent to bill by governor, including the reservation of the bill for the consideration of the President if the governor feels the need of this. That means that if any bill is being presented in front of the governor for his assent, and if the governor thinks that the bill before giving the assent needs the reconsideration of the President of India, then the governor can forward that bill to the President for his assent. Article 213 of the Indian Constitution, power of governor to promulgate ordinances during recess of state legislatures. Article 226 of the Indian Constitution details power of high courts to issue certain writs. With this, we wrap up important articles of Part 6 of the Indian Constitution. Now we come to Part 7 of the Indian Constitution. Part 7 of the Indian Constitution, first important article is Article 238 of the Indian Constitution. This Article 238 of the Indian Constitution, it was repealed or abrogated by 7th Amendment Act 1956, which contained provisions related to A and B category of states. Now, when it comes to A and B category of states, I will tell you, during the independence, when India got independent, there was, the whole of India was divided into certain groups, and there were three main groups. The first group was the British possessions in India. That means the British territory of India. That means that territory on which Britishers had the supreme authority. The second category was the princely states. There were 552 princely states. I repeat, 552 princely states. And the third category was tribal India. Now, that territory that was under the supreme court of Britishers, supreme control of Britishers, that was divided into four categories. And those four categories were termed as A category of states, B category of states, C category of states, D category of states. So, in this Article 238, A and B category of states were abolished by 7th Amendment Act 1956. After this, Part 8 of the Indian Constitution, it details administration of union territories, and it is covered from Articles 239 to 241. Article 239 AA of the Indian Constitution deals with special provisions with respect to Delhi. After this, we come to Part 9 of the Indian Constitution. Part 9 of the Indian Constitution, first important article, or we can say that in this, both the articles, Article 242 and Article 243 of the Indian Constitution, they basically were involved in the abrogation or repealment, or by this article, these two articles, Article 242, 243, it was repealed by 7th Amendment Act 1956, in which provisions were there related to C and D category of states. So by this 242 and 243 article, initially they contain provisions related to C and D category of states, and by 7th Amendment Act 1956 it was removed. Now after some time in 1992, when the 73rd and 74th Amendment Act took place, Article 243 was again added in this Part 9 of the Indian Constitution, which is now comprised of provisions related to Panchayati Raj institutions and municipal corporations. After this, Part 10 of the Indian Constitution, Article 244 of the Indian Constitution, it deals with provision of scheduled areas. Article 244A of the Indian Constitution deals with provision of tribal areas. Part 11 of the Indian Constitution, it deals with relation between union and states and is covered from Article 245 to Article 263. So, Article 249 of the Indian Constitution details about power of Parliament to legislate with respect to a matter in the state list in the national interest. This means that, so when we come to the power of state governments and union governments, there are three lists. I will tell you it in very detail, not very detail, in a very small form, because I can't tell you in detail at this point of time. This is a very succinct lecture. So powers, total powers are distributed in three lists. First is the union list, second is the state list, third is the concurrent list. Now, union list is comprised of those subjects on which only union government can legislate. For example, foreign affairs or defense affairs. These are two areas on which only union government can legislate and make decisions. In these two areas, state government cannot interfere. And by saying union government, I am saying the Parliament of India. In the second state list, these are those subjects on which only state government can legislate. For example, law and order. Now the third list, concurrent list, contains those subject matters on which both union and state government can legislate. So Article 249 of the Indian Constitution says that power of Parliament, our Parliament has the power to legislate with respect to a matter in the state list if it is in the national interest. After that, Article 262 of the Indian Constitution details adjudicating of disputes relating to waters of interstate rivers or river valleys. Article 263 of the Indian Constitution, provisions with respect to an interstate council. Now, Part 12 of the Indian Constitution. It covers finance, property, contracts and suits and is covered from Article 264 to 300. Article 265 of the Indian Constitution details taxes not to be imposed save by authority of law. Article 275 of the Indian Constitution details grants from the Union to certain states. Article 280 of the Indian Constitution details about the finance commissions. Article 300 of the Indian Constitution details about suits and proceedings. Article 300A of the Indian Constitution. It details persons not to be deprived of property save by authority of law, that is, right to property. This right was initially a fundamental right, but later it was removed from the list of fundamental rights and now it is mentioned under Article 300A of the Indian Constitution. And it is no more a fundamental right. That is, it can be abrogated or changed or modified by the Parliament of India. It is no more a fundamental right. So, right to property is no more a fundamental right. Coming to Part 13 of the Indian Constitution, it is covered from Article 301 to Article 307 and it details with the provisions related to trade, commerce and travel. Coming to Part 14 of the Indian Constitution, it comprises provisions related to services under the Union and states covered from Article 308 to Article 323, Article 308 to 323. Article 311 of the Indian Constitution details dismissal, removal or reduction in rank of persons employed in civil capacities under the Union or a state government. Article 312 of the Indian Constitution details provisions related to all India services. Article 315 of the Indian Constitution details provisions related to Public Service Commission for the Union and for the states. Article 320 of the Indian Constitution details functions of Public Service Commissions. After this, Part 14A of the Indian Constitution, covered under it are Article 323A and Article 323B of the Indian Constitution, which contains provisions related to the structural and administrative and judicial functions of Central Administrative Tribunals, that is CAT. Coming to Part 15 of the Indian Constitution, it contains provisions related to the Election and Election Commission of India. It is covered from Article 324 to Article 329. Article 324 of the Indian Constitution, superintendence, direction and control of elections to be vested in an election commission. Now, coming to Part 16 of the Indian Constitution, it details provisions related to special status related to SC, ST and Anglo-Indians. It is covered from Article 330 to Article 342. Article 330 of the Indian Constitution provides for reservation of seats for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes in the House of People. Article 335 of the Indian Constitution details claims of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes to services and posts. Coming to Part 17 of the Indian Constitution, deals with official languages. in article from article 342 to 351. Now this part 17 of the Indian Constitution has a very important role when it comes to languages, because whenever a language is mentioned in part 17 of the Indian Constitution, that language gets many privileges and many facilities. Now those privileges and those facilities that a particular language gets when it is mentioned in part 17 of the Indian Constitution, we will be telling about this in our subsequent lectures in details. As we all know that it is a very succinct or small lecture. After this, part 18 of the Indian Constitution, it deals with emergency provisions, article 352 to article 360. Article 352 of the Indian Constitution, proclamation of energy, that is proclamation of emergency, that is national emergency. Article 356 of the Indian Constitution deals with provisions in case of failure of constitutional machinery in states that leads to the imposition of President's rule. Article 360 of the Indian Constitution details provisions as a financial emergency. Coming to part 19 of the Indian Constitution, it details provisions related to judicial immunity to the President and the Governor, covered from article 361 to article 367. Article 365 of the Indian Constitution details provisions that tells us about effect of failure to comply with or to give effect to directions given by the Union. Part 20 of the Indian Constitution, under it comes article 368 of the Indian Constitution that gives the power to Parliament to amend the constitutions and procedure thereof. After this we come to part 21 of the Indian Constitution, which contains temporary, transitional and special provisions covered under article 369 to article 392. One important article under this part is article 370 of the Indian Constitution, which details temporary provisions with respect to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. After this comes the last, part 22 of the Indian Constitution that contains details about short title and commencement of the Constitution covered under article 393 to article 395. So friends, this was my effort to give you a very small idea. I am repeatedly using word detail. I am actually trying to imply the opposite. I am not saying detail, I am saying short. So simply in this audio lecture, all the articles of the Indian Constitution are covered in a very succinct way, in a very short manner, so that if you are preparing for SSC CGL or IBPS PO or RBI or FCI or any other small level examination, then this video can be important for you. You can listen it anytime, either through your laptop, either through surfing this website www.articlemaniac.org, articlemaniac.org. So in the top General Studies bar, you can find the audio lectures and you can hear it on your computer, or you can also hear it through your mobile. If you have a smartphone, simply plug in your headphone device, play the audio and you can hear it there also. So this was a very small effort and the very first audio that I am uploading here. Hope you will like this, guys. And if you like this audio, please upload your comments so that I can be more confident that you want to hear more of such materials and I can upload them more for your perusal. As you know that these audios are totally free, so please don't purchase them from anyone. These audios are totally free. These are prepared by me. My name is Harshit Dwivedi. I am preparing from civil services. I am in this preparation of civil services from the last 2 years, and this is my effort to bring knowledge to all the guys who cannot afford any sort of coaching. So in my subsequent lectures, I will in very detail tell you about the whole Indian polity and constitution and other topics. I have very concise notes which I am going to upload on my website and also in the form of audio tutorials. So I hope, guys, you will like it, and we will meet in the next audio. Thank you. Have a good day.